to the information that I found on the internet, which isn't always reliable. Today is Ramachandra Vijayotsava, the day that Ramachandra killed Ravana. And those of you that are from India, the scene that you see on the screen here is probably something you grew up with. A big effigy of Ravana and a big this and that, and firing of a fire arrow, and Ravana goes up in flames, and everyone celebrates. This marks the end of Ravana. Some places, from what I've been told, some places it's the same day as Navaratri, and some places it's the day after Navaratri. In any case, at least Google Guru says that today is the day, the Dussehra day. So we're going to spend a little bit of time discussing the pastime. Here's a nice image you saw before. The 10-headed Ravana at the base of Mount Kailash, with Lord Shiva placing his foot on Mount Kailash, pressing Mount Kailash and squishing Ravana. Ravana has a superior power above him, that's for sure. And Lord Shiva is one of them. And we're going to go to the battle in Lanka. And one day, Ravana comes out onto the battlefield, and Ram, pictured on the right side of this painting, is riding on the shoulders of Hanuman. And Ram fires an arrow that hits and pierces the chest of Ravana. He's in a lot of pain. Ram says, "You can go back to your palace now. We'll meet again tomorrow." And so Ravana is disturbed. He calls his ministers, and the next day, a big battle. So Ram, again, riding on the shoulders of, this shows actually Hanuman riding on the shoulders of Ram. And on the right side is Ram riding in the chariot of Indra, and Maithili is the chariot driver. It's Indra's chariot driver he's helping and assisting. And then, of course, on the other side is Ravana and so many other soldiers. And in the distance, that's Lanka. So, battle, pages and pages and pages of battle between Ravana and Laksmana, and this and that. Many nice paintings of the battle. I like this one, the Vanaras with their rocks raised, and the Rakshasas with their weapons. In the back is elephants and horses and chariots and so many things. And whatever Ram does, it doesn't seem to be effective. Sometimes he shoots an arrow and it severs his head, and the head goes back, and he severs his arms and his arms grow back. And according to Valmiki Ramayana, this battle between Ram and Ravana lasted for 7 days and nights without stopping. It's a little different than Shukadeva Goswami narrating to Maharaj Parikshit for 7 days and nights. It's a different mood. And it's a battle mood. Kshatriya against Rakshasa. According to the different expressions within Valmiki Ramayana, the entire battle lasted for 60 or 70 days. So at the end of the 7th day, Vibhishan confides or advises Ram how to kill Ravan. So this is from Valmiki Ramayana. In Ravana's heart is a store of celestial nectar, which renews the life in his body. The only way to kill him is to strike at his heart with a divine weapon that can dry up the nectar. And as we've been saying so many times, there are different versions of Ramayana, and one of them that's well known, and maybe some of you who are listening to this are accustomed to, the Ramcharitmanas of Tulsi. And in that writing, he has a different place for the celestial nectar. It was in the navel of Ravan. So let's explore a little bit, because that's the topic for this morning, Dussehra. Going back some time, Ram, Lakshman, and Sita were visiting ashrams of sages, one place after the next place after the next place, in Dandak forest. And according to the explanations given, it lasted for over 12 years, nearly 13 years. And towards the end, they came to the ashram of Agastya. And Agastya was very, very happy. Nice exchange, many nice discussions. At the end, two things. Agastya recommended that they spend the final year at Panchavati. And Agastya presented Ram with the bow of Vishnu that had been constructed by Vishvakarma, along with two inexhaustible quivers from Lord Indra, an infallible arrow, and this is the infallible arrow that is spoken about in Valmiki Ramayana, and a gold inlaid sword from Lord Brahma. So from Valmiki Ramayana, here's the Uttarakhanda version. That arrow, the one that Agastya gave Ram, which was inviolable as a thunderbolt hurled by the arms of Indra, and irresistible as Yama, the Lord of Death, fell upon Ravan's chest, not his navel. That arrow, released with great speed, and which was capable of destroying the body, tore off the heart of that evil-minded Ravana. So how this came to be was Vibhishan's recommendation. And from Valmiki Ramayana, again, we're in Yuddhakanda now, Matali, that's the chariot driver of Indra, who became the chariot driver of Ram, spoke. "Oh Ram, the time for this one's death has come. Recall now the prayer Agastya told you." That's like a mantra, and the mantra invokes the weapon. "Agastya also gave you an arrow when you were in the forest. Imbue that arrow with the force of the Brahmastra and kill the demon by piercing his heart, not his navel." Accepting Matali's advice, Rama remembered the celestial arrow which Agastya had given him long ago in the forest. At once it appeared in his hand, and he fitted it to his bow. Its shaft was made of ether, and its weight consisted of the Mandra and Meru mountains. They're big mountains. The wind god presided over its shaft, the fire god over its plumes, and the sun god was installed at its point. It looked like the rod of universal destruction wielded by the time spirit himself. Time spirit means Kala Shakti, that destroys everything. Rama again chanted the Aditya Hridaya prayer, and then invoked the infallible Brahmastra. As Ram drew back the arrow, he shone so brilliantly that none could look at him. He released the weapon, and it flew at Ravana lighting up the earth and sky and roaring like a tumultuous ocean. It struck the demon on his chest, not his navel. Even as he stood firing his own weapons at Ram, piercing right through his heart, the arrow emerged from Ravana's body, soaked in blood, and entered the earth. Ravana whirled around and let out a cry which seemed to shake the entire creation. His bow dropped from his hands, and he fell from his chariot like a mountain struck down by Indra's thunderbolt. So that's the Dussehra story from Valmiki Ramayana. And now we're going to take a quick look at this other version. This is not, it's not Tulsi Das. The author is unknown, but it's similar to his view. We saw this before. The author writes, in his heart, that's Ravana, always resides Sita, and within the heart of Sita is myself, Rama. And within me is the entire universe along with the earth and its 7 islands. Thinking like this, Lord Ram, who always cares for the welfare of the 3 worlds, did not shoot the arrow at the chest of Ravana, but instead shot it at Ravana's navel. May that Lord Rama bestow good fortune on us all. Now, in the Sanskrit, it doesn't specifically say navel, but it says he didn't shoot at his chest for the reason that he didn't want to shoot in his heart or chest, because that's where Sita is, and within the heart of Sita is Ram, and within the heart of Ram is all living entities. And he's the protector of all living entities, so he didn't shoot him in the heart. And there's a similar but different rendering. This is taken directly from Ramcharitamanas. After Lord Sri Ram's arrows cut off Ravana's head and arms, they were renewed again with head and arms. This news was given to Mother Sita by Trijata, one of the favorable demonesses. Mother Sita felt much disappointed, hearing that Ram's arrows were unable to finish Ravana. Sita started lamenting, considering the situation. To console Mother Sita, Trijata spoke as follows. Listen, O princess. The enemy of the gods, that's Ravana, will surely die if an arrow pierces his breast. But your Lord is careful not to strike him there, for he knows that Videha's daughter, that's Sita, abides in his chest. He was prevented, that's Ram was prevented, by the thought that Janaka's daughter dwells in Ravana's heart, and that Janaki's heart is his own abode. In his belly are contained the numberless spheres, doesn't say what that means, which will all perish the moment his arrows pierce Ravana's heart. Now listen, fair lady, how your enemy will meet his death, and shake off the great misgiving which still haunts your mind. Ravana will get disconcerted when his heads are cut off, with the result that you will escape his mind. That particular moment will the all-wise Sri Ram strike him in the heart. Interesting. Now, it does say here he'll strike him in the heart. But in the same Ramcharitamanas, in another section, Vibhishan said to Ram, listen, all-wise ruler of the animate and inanimate creation, protector of the suppliant, that's the one who surrenders to him, delight of the gods and sages, in the depth of his navel there is nectar, by virtue of which my Lord by virtue of which, my lord, Ravana survives. Drawing the bowstring right up to his ear, the lord of the Raghus let fly 31 shafts, which flew forth like serpents of death. One arrow sucked up the depths of the navel, not his chest, while the rest struck the 10 heads and 20 arms with impetuosity. That's the 30. His 10 heads and 20 arms, that's the 30 arrows cut. And then he didn't shoot him in the chest, according to this passage, but in the navel. While dying, he, that's Ravana, shouted with a loud and terrible roar, "Where is Ram, that I may challenge and slay him in battle?" Chivalry. So, several paintings illustrating the moment of Ravan's death, and these paintings are in keeping with the Valmiki version. He was shot in the chest. Here's looks like an ISKCON painting. There's definitely an ISKCON painting. I think it's one of the Russian artists that painted many paintings that are now in the Delhi temple. There's Ram's chariot. We don't see his chariot driver, but he has a chariot driver. And there's Ravan, and in his chest, you see, in the region of his heart, there's an arrow sticking out, and a lot of other soldiers on both sides. Another BBT painting. Ravan is in the air this time, and Ram shoots him in the chest. He comes crashing down. Another BBT painting. We'll see close-ups of both sides, but in the background, elephants and horses and foot soldiers and everything. There's Ram's chariot, and he fires this arrow that pierces Ravan's chest. There's a close-up of Ram's firing his arrow, and there's a close-up of Ravana receiving the arrow in his chest. And it looks like there's big flames in the background, which is not really what was going on at the time, but that's okay. Makes the painting drama-filled. So that's our little discussion in honor of Dussehra. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. So now we're going to go to where we left off yesterday with Lakshmana Part 2. Now, fitting into Lakshmana Part 2 is something that comes from one of the PDFs that you all received, or should have received. If you didn't, send some notice and you can receive them. The 18 cardinal lessons of Ramayana, and they're centered around surrender or attaining shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Ramachandra. And these 18 cardinal teachings, the first that's listed there is characteristics of a devotee yearning for liberation. Now, one could say, at least Gaudiya Vaishnavas might say, you don't yearn for liberation, you come to the platform of devotional service, and that's the platform of liberation. So one might say, this is a translation of writings of Govindaraj. So I don't know what he wrote in Sanskrit or Tamil, whatever language he wrote in. But yearning for the association of Lord Ramachandra, one can say like that. So Sheshatvam, or servitude, and rendering personal service, yearning for the personal service of Lord Ramachandra, is exhibited in a superlative way by Lakshmana. you see down below. So there's 3 references. The first is what we're going to hear a little bit more about today. When Lakshmana failed to convince Ram to stay and become king, and he'll take care of everybody that opposes it, he's now clear that Ram is going to follow what his father said, and now he's going to appeal to him. And it's this Sheshatvam, rendering personal service. Please make me your servant. There's nothing inappropriate in this. My purposes will become fulfilled, and your needs can be taken care of. Now, it's an interesting rasa. It's the servitude rasa that's being expressed, but there's also brotherly affection. So there's sakya, like brothers, friends, but a very prominent mood in Lakshmana's character is servitude. This is the first example. A second example is Lakshmana when they first meet Hanuman. Now Sita wasn't there yet, but that's the painting that I selected. It's a nice painting. Lakshmana told Hanuman, they're sort of introducing themselves to one another. I am his younger brother, famous by the name Lakshmana. Captivated by his qualities, I have become his servant. For he is grateful and considers little acts of service to be great. Thus the mood of service is imbued with appreciation of the Supreme Lord. Now this is taken from Govindaraj, explaining these 18 cardinal teachings. The first of them is yearning for the service of the Supreme Lord. There's another example, and that's when Sumantra is returning to Ayodhya after leaving them by the side of the Ganges and so forth and so on. And Lakshman, it's on the table. Lakshman gives a message for his parents. At this point in time, Dasarath is still alive, and his mother is still alive. And so Sumantra is to carry a message to them. I do not consider the emperor as my father. For me, Ram is the brother, lord, relative, and my father. Ram is everything to me. This is some examples of the characteristic of Sheshatvam, and we're going to hear some of that, like I'm going to read from Lakshmana's expressions to Ram to allow him to be his servant. In this list of 18 cardinal lessons from Ramayana, the second one is Paratantriyam. Paratantriyam means depending upon the Lord. Bharata, we're going to have a whole session on Bharata. But with Lakshmana, here's an example. Lakshmana's response when Ram requests Lakshmana to construct a cottage in Panchavati, in his words, considering the likings of all 3 of them, which that's a sensible thing to say. There's three together in the forest, and you consider where and what it will look like according to the needs of all 3. And Lakshmana is taken aback by that comment. We're going to hear some more later. I'll say it briefly. Lakshmana thought that Lord Ram had separated Lakshmana's pleasure from Lord Rama's pleasure. So Lakshmana replies, I am but a dependent. That's Paratantriyam. I am but a dependent. As long as you are here, even if that be eternity, I will be submissive to you. Therefore, you tell me a place that is delightful for you. We'll cover it a little more in detail when we get there to Panchavati. But commentary, there's a lot of commentary on this exchange, and it has to do with how expertly and delicately and gently, patiently Ram corrects. Sometimes he's, very direct and immediate. But way back during this discussion, when Lakshman is appealing to Ram to take him with him, let him be his servant, he says something that sounds, we'll go into the detail later, like false ego, like I'm the doer and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And Ram didn't say anything at the time, but he wanted to correct him. So years later, 13 years later, he's correcting him this way by saying, select something that's for the three of us. And the commentators say, not necessarily that Ram understood the connection between something he said 13 years ago and today, but he is in the mood of being a dependent servant. And Ram was very pleased to see that he had corrected himself. Instead of like an independent person doing things and taking charge of things, and as we commonly do, I'll say again, as we commonly do, we think we're going to do this and do that and take charge of this and take charge of that and think in terms of doership. The commentators make a big deal about this. It's not how one should think. One should think this way, paratantrium, one is completely dependent. That doesn't mean in practical matters of life, you have to ask your authority, should I step with my left foot first or my right foot first? Should I, all little things don't require. It's speaking more about a mood of dependency. That's the lesson that the commentators want us to understand, going way back to Yamunacharya and down the line of disciplic succession. So now we're at the place, where, let me read, where Lakshman wants to go with Ram. We're after where we ended in the previous class. Ram had spoken to his mother, and Lakshman was with him when he spoke to his mother, and there was back and forth between Lakshman and Ram and his mother, and then the three of them, and it ended up that she just became resolved that he's determined to follow this pledge of Dasarath. Next, Ram goes to see Sita, and it's very intriguing how Sita responds. She has something of a leftist mood. She speaks really heavy to Ram, then she speaks really soft, and then she speaks heavy, and then she speaks soft, and back and forth. Finally, Ram consents. She can come. with him to the forest. Sita was overjoyed to hear her husband's agreement. Her face bloomed like a full-blown lotus. Excitedly, she began following Ram's instructions, giving away all her costly garments and jewels, as well as all the other riches in her palace. In the meantime, Lakshmana, who had been waiting patiently outside Sita's apartments, saw Ram coming out. He bowed down before Ram and held his feet tightly. If your mind is set upon leaving for the forest, then take me with you, he implored. I shall walk ahead of you, holding my bow and guarding against all dangers. With joy, I shall accompany you through the beautiful woods resounding with the cries of wild animals. Without you, I do not desire even the rulership of all the worlds. Lakshmana hoped. We're getting a picture at another site. You know, he's a Kshatriya. So there was this discussion yesterday about, if he's the guru, how come he has all these heavy statements? He's Kshatriya. And he's very soft at heart. All of that was from his soft heart, coming out of a Kshatriya spirit. But Ram tried to dissuade him. My dearest Lakshmana, you are dearer to me than life itself. Remember, from their childhood, they were inseparable. Inseparable. Like Siamese twins or something, inseparable. They would always be together. Always, always, always. And now separation. Always affectionate, devoted to virtue, and firm on the right path, you are my constant and most valued companion. Yet, if you follow me to the forest, who will be left to serve your mother, Sumitra, and the illustrious Kaushalya? Ram suggested that Kaikeyi would not be kind to her co-wives when she obtained the kingdom. Bharata would be devoted to his own mother, Kaikeyi, and thus the other queens would be neglected. Therefore, Lakshmana should remain in Ayodhya to care for Kaushalya and Sumitra. By serving Ram's elders, Lakshmana would demonstrate his devotion to Ram. Ram concluded, incomparably great religious merit will be earned by you, O noble Lakshmana, and our mothers will be saved from suffering. So he should be submissive, right? Lakshmana was not inclined to accept Ram's advice. How could he live without Ram? In soft but firm words, he argued that Bharata and Shatrughna were both devoted to Ram. They would therefore serve all of Ram's elders equally. Lakshmana promised his brother, if somehow they become proud and arrogant upon attaining the kingdom, abandoning virtue and neglecting their elders, I will return to punish them. For even while we live in the forest, news of the kingdom will reach us through the sages and ascetics living there. Lakshmana had already anticipated Ram's objections and had carefully considered them. There was no doubt in his mind that he should follow his brother. Continuing to reassure Ram, Lakshmana reminded him how the king had already arranged more than adequate support for Kaushalya and her dependents. The revenue of thousands of villages was under her control. She was capable of maintaining herself as well as Sumitra, and even Lakshmana himself, he concluded. Therefore, kindly make me your personal attendant, for there will be no unrighteousness in this act. Going before you with my sword, I shall clear a safe path for you and Sita. In wakefulness or sleep, you shall find me by your side, ever ready to do your bidding, which is what he did. Ram was pleased and comforted to hear Lakshman speak. Lakshman was as dear to him as life itself, and Ram had been sad at the prospect of leaving him. Holding Lakshmana by the shoulders and looking into his expectant face, Ram said, "Take leave of your near and dear ones, O my brother, for we shall depart shortly." Lakshmana felt a surge of happiness, and his limbs trembled. He bowed to his elder brother and asked for his order. Ram asked Lakshmana to go to Vashishta's hermitage, where he had left some divine weapons. There were 2 celestial bows, along with a pair of inexhaustible quivers, 2 impenetrable pieces of body armor, and a pair of long, shining swords. Ram had received these as a dowry from Janaka and had left them with Vashishta so they could receive daily worship in his hermitage. He said to Lakshmana, "Bring all these weapons, dear brother, for I feel I will have need of them soon." So his mood of wanting to be in service to Ram is very strong. There's a nice section which we'll cover this evening when Lakshman goes to meet with his wife and explain to his wife that he's heading for the forest. It's really nice, really, really nice. So here we are with Dasrath looking a wreck. Vashishta is trying to pacify. Kaikeyi looked like a snotty lady, and there's all the ornaments of Kaikeyi on the floor. And Ram is showing Sita how to wear deerskin clothing, and he and Lakshman are already ready for the forest. And before the end of the day, which was Ram's plan, off he goes with Sumantra. He's not wearing the deerskin clothing, but that's okay. And there's Lakshman in the back, guarding the divine couple. And the citizens, of course, this painting, on the left side, it shows them appealing to, "Let us go, let us go." This painting shows that the whole city left, following Ram. And they're ready to enter the forest. And they get as far as the river. They take rest at night. Guha comes and greets them. I want to read briefly what Guha says. Guha wants to honor Ram because Guha had gone to Ayodhya on many occasions to offer his respects to the royal family, and he had this affectionate relationship with Ram already. And Ram is going into the forest. He wants to have him serve him a nice feast. And Ram says that you can take all of these nice foods you've made and feed them to the animals, and I'll just take water. Reluctantly, Guha commanded his men to do as Ram had requested, having the best of food brought for the horses. He watched with sadness and admiration as Ram accepted only water for himself and then lay down to sleep on a bed of leaves. Lakshmana washed Ram's feet and again kept vigil nearby. Going over to Lakshmana, Guha said, "Here is a bed for you. There is no need to remain awake, for I shall stand here, bow in hand, and guard you all from danger. There is nothing in these woods unknown to me. Indeed, along with my men, I could withstand the attack of a vast and powerful army coming upon this region." Guha took Lakshmana by the arm and showed him the bed, but Lakshmana politely refused his offer. Under your protection, we feel not even the least fear, O sinless Guha, but how can I rest while Ram and Sita lie down on the earth? Lakshmana looked at his brother, lying beneath the tree. His mind was troubled. How could one such as Ram, who was capable of withstanding even the gods in battle, be brought to such a state? Lakshmana's thoughts drifted to Ayodhya. He became restless, thinking of his father and the subjects. Surely Dasarath would soon breathe his last, having sent his dearest son to a life of severe austerity. Probably Kaushalya and the king would die that very night, uttering words of despair and anguish, losing their beloved monarch. After watching Ram depart, the people of Ayodhya would be seized with agony after agony. This is this shoka mood coming again and again and again in Ramayana. Engrossed in such thoughts, Lakshmana breathed heavily like an infuriated serpent. Hot tears glided down his face. Guha placed an arm around his shoulder and gently reassured him. As the two men spoke, the night gradually slipped away. Krishna Dharma is a really excellent writer. I like reading what he writes. So they spent the night, and it's now time to cross to the other side of the Ganges. Here's Guha being requested to provide passage across the Ganges. And that little skinny fellow, that's the boatman. And there's behind them is the boat. And they're bidding farewell. Then there's one version of Ramayana that tells a very nice story. And this painting was painted by a devotee in Detroit who was moved by the story, so he made a painting of the story. And there's the boatman who's got his arms up. So Ram instructed Lakshmana, help Sita get situated in the boat, and then you stand guard at the bow of the boat, and then I'll get on the boat across the Ganga. But as Ram was about to step on the boat, the boatman said, no, 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 you can't get in the boat. And Sita was really disturbed. Like, you're a boatman. You're supposed to carry us to the other side. Why are you saying this? And Ram smiled knowingly and asked the boatman, why are you saying like this? Saying the boat is to carry us to the other side. The boatman said, I've heard that you just stepped on a stone and the stone turned into a woman. And I already have a daughter. And I don't have even the means to marry my daughter. Now what happens if my boat becomes a woman? I'll be in big trouble, so you can't step in the boat. And Ram said, well, what's the solution? The boatman said, I'll wash your feet thoroughly, and then you can step in the boat, because all the dust from your feet, that can't go in the boat. So, knowingly, Ram allowed him to wash his feet. Sita's looking on like this boatman's a madman. And, there's details of her words. And as soon as the boatman finishes washing his feet, he pours the water on the heads of his family members and drinks himself. And now Sita understands what the boatman was up to. So Ram gets in the boat, and they cross to the other side of the river. And then the story ends this way. Ram wants to reciprocate with service rendered. This is what cultured people do. They're feeling grateful for services rendered. And so he wants to give him a gift, but he has no gift. So he asks Sita, do you have any jewel or something that you can give to the boatman? And she immediately provides some jewel. Ram wishes to give the jewel to the boatman, who declines. My life is now completely fulfilled. Being able to render service to you is everything to me, and I don't wish to receive anything from you other than additional service. Let me simply serve you. That's a very nice story in the matter of the mood of service to Ram, even from very humble man like this boatman. A little tricky, but humble service. And so there they go, crossing the Ganga. And our understanding about the mood of Lakshman, the personality of Lakshman, he exemplifies the purpose of life. That purpose of life is to serve the Lord totally. Very similar to Vibhishan, the body, minds, and words, the Atma-nivedana, that's similar as Lakshman. Now, he doesn't go from unsurrendered to surrendered or from distant to close. He's always was like that, and he is like that, whether in Ayodhya or in the forest. So when they're on the other side of the river, they're the Dandak, the Aranyakanda section ends, and the Kishkinda section begins, because they're heading for their 14 years in the forest. There's a nice verse spoken by Hanuman in Canto 5, Chapter 19, that this painting reminds me of. The painting itself reminds me of Lord Vishnu with Lakshmi at the feet of Lord Vishnu, massaging the feet of Lord Vishnu. So in this case, similar to how Sri Vaishnavas see, it's Ram is an expansion or incarnation of Vishnu or Narayan, and Sita is the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi. And then there's Lakshman. Lakshman is guarding every night. He stays awake every night. That's a long time to stay awake, 14 years. But he's guarding so that there's no difficulty for Sita and Ram. That's simply his mood. And in many varieties of ways he serves, but this is one. It's service. Like we heard yesterday of his anger, turbulent anger, that someone was going to interfere with Ram becoming king. That's where the anger was arising from, his love for Ram. And now he's accepted, this is his decision, so let me serve him in this way. And in every possible way. Certainly, there's many such paintings. Here's another such painting. And in any possible way, it's his way of serving. What this is showing, this is part of a larger painting. Here's the larger painting where he's cooking. Now, Sita certainly knows how to cook, but he likes the service. And whatever it is, he's good with his hands. He can build cottages. He does everything. As he requested, he's there for the service to the personality of Godhead. And we're going to end shortly because it goes on, a nice description of Sita speaking to Ram, how happy she is, how different it is being with him in the forest, supplying simple roots and fruits from forest fare, and seeing the beauty of the forest animals and birds and flowers, and she simply loves being in the forest. Actually, the Ayodhya Kanda hasn't ended. They're on their way, heading for the depths of the Dandak forest. They come to the ashram of Bhardraj Muni, and some very nice exchanges with him. He then suggests where they could stay for their time in Dandak forest. He suggests Chitrakoot. He gives the directions how to get there. And after leaving, because Bhardraj Muni was a disciple or student of Valmiki, this is in Valmiki Ramayana where Valmiki and Ram actually meet. Now, there's some descriptions that Valmiki wrote Ramayana after this meeting. He actually had darshan of Lord Ramachandra, the person who he was going to be describing in Valmiki Ramayana. Prior to this, he heard from Narada, and he received benedictions from Narada and from Lord Brahma to compose, but some at least say he began the composition at this time, after darshan of Lord Ramachandra. In any case, they conclude by reaching Chitrakoot, which is a very nice place. I had never been there. I'd never even, to be honest, I'd never even heard of Chitrakoot until we went there. But it's very serene. The people there, the residents in Chitrakoot, it's high up on a hill, and they're very devotional. It's very, very natural devotion. It's an unspoiled place, at least when we went there. And just very similar to the village sections of Vrindavan. There, the villagers in Vrindavan, it's Jai Radhe, Jai Radhe. And in Chitrakoot, it's Sri Ram, Jai Ram. They're very, very devoted to Lord Ramachandra. So a cottage was built. Here's the cottage, or a painting of the cottage. And there's Laksmana standing guard. And they resided in Chitrakoot for around 3 months before Bharata came. And that's where we're going to end. I think what we'll do next is go to Bharat, because this is where he comes in the narration of Ramayana. Let's see, in the evening, that may be where we'll go. So it's 8:30. I'm going to allow some time for discussion. The aim of all of this is to get some appreciation of the personality, these different personalities. So Lakshman has a function of service, and he also has his unique personality. And in all circumstances, it's intense mood of serving Ram. And his emotions go this way and emotions go that way, because the life of devotion doesn't mean blasé or bland, but he has very intense emotions connected to Lord Ramachandra, which is and they're very sweet, as one gets to understand and appreciate the personality. I like thinking of Lakshman like Balaram, or like Lord Nityananda. In the case of Balaram, in their childhood, they were constantly together. There were passages in their life where Balaram from Dwaraka went elsewhere other than where Krishna was on the occasion of chasing the Shatadhanva, to see if he had the Shamantakra jewel. They went all the way from Dwarka to Mithila, and he didn't have the jewel. So Balaram stayed for some time with the king of Mithila. King Bahurashva was his name. And Ram went back. So he was there for a long time, a few years, and then returned and joined Ram in Dwarka. Another separation time was when Balaram went to Vrindavan to pacify the residents of Vrindavan, and he was physically separated from Krishna. But we don't, other than Lakshman being sent to take Sita to the ashram of Valmiki, I can't think of circumstances when they were separate. Even when Ram had to leave Ayodhya as the king, Lakshman was his constant companion. Lord Nityananda, there was a large stretch of time when, under the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he went to perform the distribution of the holy name in Bengal, and they lived in a separate manner for quite some time. And from their childhood, they weren't together, but, intimately associated. Lakshman had this very special privilege that he was largely, constantly in the companionship of and service of Lord Ramachandra in many, many, many different ways. Looks like a little nifty cottage, yeah? Built by hand by Lakshman. That means they had the tools, the axes and whatever else was needed. They traveled with all that stuff. Hard to say, but they did. Let's see if there's some comments or questions.
There's a question online from Radhakund Mataji.
Okay.
She says, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Agastya Muni has given a bow to Lord Ramachandra and also a mantra, Aditya Hridayam, which is a prayer to the sun god. As per your presentation, Lord Ram, before he shoots an arrow to Ravana's heart, he recited Aditya. How to understand the Supreme Lord praying to the sun god?
I don't know what version of Ramayana you're reading. Why is Ram praying to the sun god is her question. I'm not aware of a version of Ramayana that says he was praying to the sun god. He's from the Sun dynasty, but even from the Sun dynasty, that he's praying to the sun god is news to me.
Saying that the Aditya Hridayam prayer.
In where?
The Aditya Hridayam prayer.
Yeah.
Is, her understanding is.
I'm not sure that's correct. It's a mantra. It's a mantra. So I don't know how to answer your question. I don't understand, as you understand it, that mantra is a prayer to the sun god. Now, one way of appreciating Ram's activities is he doesn't need anybody. He's the independent, all-powerful Supreme. He engages people in different ways, as if he is dependent. For example, crossing to Lanka. He requests the Varuna or Samudra or the god of the ocean to come and help him. He doesn't need his help. So why is he asking for his help? He's giving him some service. So if you're right that that particular mantra is invoking something from the sun god, he's just giving him an opportunity to do some service, that's all. He doesn't need anything. And with that understanding, there's no need for pastimes because he doesn't need anything. He just is everything. But in pastimes, there are others that render service, and he extends opportunity to render service to others. If you're right that that particular phrase means he was praying to the sun god. And I'm not sure you're right that that means he was praying to the sun god. I can check. Maybe I'll be able to find out before this evening. Next.
That's the only question online right now. I have a question.
Okay.
It's more related to yesterday morning. But my question concerns Maricha being killed by Lord Ram as a golden. And in a previous class, you had mentioned that he decided to be killed by Lord Ram instead of by Ravana.
Yes.
After Ravan had
Yes.
approached him for the second.
Yes.
And so my question is it a sound decision to be killed by Lord Ram in an act of apparently deceiving him than to choose to be killed by Ravan while protecting Ram's deceit?
Well, neither of them are better. Better is, since he knew that Ram is all-powerful, whether he understood Ram as the personality of Godhead, he knew him as all-powerful, more powerful than Ravana. Really simple. Go to Ram and say, help, protect me. And Ram would have protected him. And, Ravana's finished. But he didn't do that. Now, one of the explanations of why he didn't do that was he didn't have any association with someone, a bhakta. Unlike Sugriva, who was intimidated, who is this person with wearing tree bark but carrying bows and arrows and swords and the paraphernalia of a kshatriya, who is it? He had the association of Hanuman. And through the association of Hanuman, he became Ram's bhakta. But Maricha didn't. So now, back to your question, that would have been the best thing. And the other options, neither of them are good. But his concern, your question is, what about us? Or it's not, did Maricha make the right decision? And what about us? No, we would say no to either of those. No, I suppose better to be killed by Ravan than to bring about a disaster for Sita, because that was a subset of the plan. When Ram did this and that and that, and then Sita will be left alone. Because part of the plan was, when you are killed by Ram, call out in Ram's voice, Sita, Lakshman. And then Lakshman will go to help, and Sita will be left alone, then I can kidnap her. That was his game plan, and it worked. So if we know that, Maricha knew that was the game plan, we don't put Sita in difficulty. So better to be killed by Ravan if we knew the game plan of Ravan. But it wouldn't have matched the the Leela. It will go back to this discussion about Yadrichaya. Yadrichaya was spoken twice in Valmiki. This is, stepping back and stepping back 3 times. There was a game-changing event, 2 of them. One, what Mantra said to Kaikeyi, what Kaikeyi did somehow or another. Kaikeyi spoke these terrible words because it then provided the opportunity for Ram to go to the forest, which was one of the purposes of his appearing in this world, which was giving his association to the devotees. So he went to hermitage to hermitage to hermitage for 13 years, giving association to the devotees. They were hankering to see him in their meditations, and he came before them. So, Pritranaya Sadhunam. Then they came the Vinyashaya Chaduskritam, that was Shurpanaka. Somehow or another, she came forward and said what she said and did what she did. And Maricha is part of that. It's the destruction of Ravana. As she was moved, he was moved to do what he did. We should understand like that. Super Soul was in his heart. He already had 2 encounters. He was already totally respectful. He was not only respectful, he was hiding in a cave. You know this part, right? And everywhere I see Ram, I go outside and I see a tree and I see Ram, so I'd stay in a cave. Because he's afraid. Because Ram, I may be finished. So better to be finished by Ram than by you. So he inspired by Super Soul. That means inspired by Ram in his heart to do what he did so the Leela could play itself out. That's why he did what he did. And I always had this doubt. Well, kind of. Why did he, after being killed by Ram, why did he call out? Why did he do what Ravana said? Because he could have not called out, "Oh, Lakshmana, oh, Sita, help." Could have just been killed by Ram. Finished. Sita's safe. He's killed by Ram. He could have done that. The explanation is given that he wanted Ravana to be killed. And so he did that because it worked, and then Ram would go kill Ravana. So kind of a get back mentality. But let Ravana be killed by Ram, as I'm being killed by Ram. So that's why he called out as he did. No, Sita had to go through a big ordeal in the in-between, but it ended up that way. We have 15 minutes. Anything else in the room? You have something.
Krishna Yogashala says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, that the prayer is a glorification of Surya.
Okay.
God.
Okay, so Surya Narayan is worship of the Supreme Lord, not just the sun god, Surya. Very good.
More comments?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, we heard about Kekai, the word Yadrichaya. We also know that when Lord Rama came to Kaushalya to take her permission that he'll be leaving for the forest, that time Kaushalya also says that maybe Kekai will not take care of me and I will be kind of, alone. And there are 2-3 more places where Kekai's character was described as not nice.
Yeah.
So then how can we understand that? Lakshmana says that, the Kaushalya herself says that, now Lord Rama is also saying to Lakshmana that maybe Kaikai will not take care of Kaushalya and Sumitra, so you should stay back.
The point of the needle is the word yadrichaya.
Yeah.
So it's only if are you contesting or are you giving information? It is used more than 2 places in Ramayana? No.
No.
So what you're asking is, why would Ram put his mother at risk? That's your question?
No, I'm trying to say, along with Yadrichaya, maybe Kaikai's character, because it was said by Lord Rama.
Maybe what?
Kaikai's character was not good.
Character was not good.
Yeah, character in the sense the behavior was not that good.
Well, in general speaking, Ram says multiple times, she treated me better than she treated her own son. In many cases, she said, I have more affection for you than my own son. So she's acting out of character. It's a providential arrangement that she spoke like this. The providential arrangement means him. So he's supposing, just by, not by necessarily stating her character, but by stating human character. Now she's in power, her son's the king, and she may be, contaminated like worldly people are contaminated and, not treat Kaushalya or Sumitra nicely. It's a supposition. It's not an evaluation of her character, necessarily. And so if that were to happen, there are things that can be done. And then Lakshman has a really good answer. He already thought it out. They'll look after her. And it's true. Bharata was ready to, blast his mother. And the only reason he didn't is because Ram wouldn't approve. And when he was, Shatrughna was ready to blast Mantra, Bharata protected Mantra. Ram wouldn't approve. So he wouldn't act outside of Ram's interest. So that Ram's interest, when he's there, would be to protect the 2 mothers.
And another point from today's discussion, it looked like that Guha didn't was not the one who rowed the boat.
There's different versions of Ramayana, and some versions of Ramayana, which I didn't show, there's not a, you'll see later. Some show he's in the boat with the boatman. Some show he's only in the boat himself. There are different versions of Ramayana. And this nice, I like story of the boatman not allowing Ram to enter till he washed his feet is not Valmiki Ramayana. It's just a very sweet exchange. That's why I included it. Taking some liberties. You have something back there?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much. First part's not a comment, it's more of an appreciation. I really loved highlighting of the first 2 of the 18 cardinal principles or teachings. And then how you expanded based on reply to Radhakund Mataji's comment. And I was looking at the interplay and the symmetry of what you said, and found it very instructive. And perhaps you may want to elaborate more, just for my encouraging my devotion.
Elaborate on Ram was simply interested in giving people service? That point?
Yes, but I'd just like to add something.
Yeah.
Item number 2 of the cardinal principles that you highlighted was dependency upon the Lord, paratantriam. And I really appreciated the comment you made at the question answer session, where the devotee is in that mood of dependency upon the Lord, yet the Lord is engaging different personalities, individuals, as if he's dependent.
Yes.
I thought that was the
Yes.
heart of bhakti.
Yes.
And then I saw the symmetry in that, or I think I perceived a symmetry in that, in Lakshmanji's comment to Hanuman that I've become his, Lord Ram's servant, for he's grateful.
Yes.
I thought that was just
Yes.
so symmetric and so synergistic, so to speak. So,
Well, here's another one. I mean, there's gratitude from the Lord to the devotee, and there's the gratitude from the devotee to the Lord. And saralata, it's one of the characteristics of the one who is being surrendered unto, and that is he's indiscriminate about who he accepts. He accepts everyone. He's accessible to everyone. He's not partial to some, and and impartial to others. He's accepting to everyone. But then that's a quality of a Vaishnava or a Brahmin. Simplicity and straightforward. So what is in the Lord is in the devotee. What's in the devotee is in the Lord, and that's when one comes to the place or the mood of bhakti. That's what one experiences and what one should expect to find. And it's true. Now, there's less than pure bhakti, and so it's less than, symmetrical. I'm grateful when I receive something, and I'm ungrateful when I don't receive something. That's not bhakti. Because the not receiving something is also receiving something. Being deprived of something I want may very well be an act of kindness. And one whose heart is simple takes it that way. And one whose heart is not simple doesn't take it that way.
thank you very much. Is then a question? Thank you very much for speaking those wonderful words. Is there a question? Is there a reason? Because I haven't read Sri Govindaraj's commentary. So is there a reason that rendering personal service to the Lord is item 1 and dependency upon the Lord is item 2?
I don't know if there's a logic behind the sequence of 1 and 2.
Because I remember, I think back in 1999 when I went to the first Bhakti Riksha in Palatine, you asked a wonderful question, if memory serves me correctly, which was, what comes first? Surrender to the Lord or service to the Lord? And you elaborated beautifully on that, so that's why.
Yeah, I in thinking a little bit more about your question, it's something like chanting, or any service, you want to chant. And then as you're wanting to chant, there's some realization that I can't control my mind. I can chant, but I can't keep my mind on chanting because I'm accustomed to a mind, I'm distracted, a mind that goes everywhere. So then this sense of dependence upon the name to be able to keep absorbed in the name. So serving where it's the mood of dependence to be able to fulfill that service. And circling back to this, we'll cover it when we get to Lakshmana again. But this situation where Lakshman said, no, the exact wording is really important, but Lakshman said something that looked like false ego to Ram. I'm going to do this and do that and take me with you. The service that's not dependent was that. What he expressed in Panchavati is a service that's dependent. So the commentators say the mentality was corrected very subtly by Ram, saying, do something that's suitable to all three of us, which is, that's fine. We should do our service like that. When you do something, you consider how it's going to be impactful upon others. But when it comes to the mood of service, the top principle is what's pleasing to Krishna. When we're considering what's beneficial and helpful and meaningful to others, that's at the top. Mami kam, or Mai Ananya Chanyenya Bhakti Abhyavicharini. That's at the top. That's the lesson of surrender. Even when we're doing things where we're being considerate of others' needs and requirements. Okay, I'm looking. You have something? Last question.
Maharaj, book. There was Lakshman wanted to go with Lord Ram to the forest, and Lord Ram. One of them were Lord Ram said to stay because Bharat will only listen to his.
Yeah.
Bharat before.
Of course. And we're if things go well, that's what we'll hear about this evening is Bharata's character. He's another special, different, and very special person. Very special person. He's like he's one of the ones. Some of these heroes are persons that are in the background, but they're supporting everything. It's like amongst the six Goswamis, they have different personalities. And one of those amongst the six Goswamis that's like that is Gopal Bhatta. He's foundational. From, the Hari Bhakti Vilas and the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. He was these are different historical versions, but he was the source. But he just didn't want his name mentioned, or Krishnadas Kaviraj's writing. He just didn't want his name mentioned. He was always wanting to be in the background, serving. But, the basis and support of what the other Vaishnavas were doing in the background. Bharat is not this, of course, not the same, but, there's a certain kind of characteristic. He just wanted to be in service. That was his mood. And it was unflinching. Now, Lakshman is in the foreground, and Bharata is in the background. Now, he was pushed to be in the foreground, but he decided to stay in the background. I'll live in a cottage far from Ayodhya, and I'll rule from there. If Ram's going to undergo austerities, then I'll undergo austerities. Because, so it's his mood. Different. We'll hear some more tonight, hopefully.
Maharaj.
Follow up?
A follow up, or just I have heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but there was also a sweet exchange between Guha and Lord Ram. When Guha takes Lord Ram to the other side of the river, Mata wanted to give, Lord Ram had told her to give something to Guha. a gesture of thank you, thank you, thank you. So Guhat makes a comment. He said, I don't need anything because we have a tradition in our culture to another boatman that we give a free ride to them, because I just take person from this shore to other. You take all of us from this material
Oh, that's
existence.
very nice. Can you find that reference? Are you able to find that reference? You see if you can find that reference and send it to me. Okay, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.